Georgia's hot and humid, so that stood out almost instantly. But it's bearable. Also, the people. I mean, that's what really. Well, I guess it kind of depends on the areas that you're in. But there were areas where it was just very, very developed, and there were lots of big, nice houses, and it was really, really nice areas. But then there were also, my first area where I served was in Pearson, Georgia, and it was kind of the sticks, if you will. It was a very poor area, but I don't know if there's a better group of people on the planet than the people in that city. That was really where I have some of the more vivid memories of the mission, and met some of the most incredible people was there. But they're just so, that's what stands out to me, is just how warm, loving, outgoing, friendly, open the people are. And there's, I mean, like I said, I mean, there's the city really developed areas, but then there's these other areas where it's just trees along the highway, and you see a house every, 100 yards. There's 2 stoplights maybe in the whole city, and one grocery store. And so I had the opportunity to serve really rural, really urban areas as well, and to see that contrast. But yeah, as far as climate goes, hot and humid, and the people, only the best, very religious. They know their Bible, without a doubt. So I had to really brush up on that myself, and learn, really the importance of having a modern day prophet to help us understand the scriptures, because they can be interpreted in so many different ways. It's important to know the way that the Lord would have them interpreted, and so it was fun to talk to people about all of that, and the benefits of that. And so, yeah, I mean, it was but they were very good examples of disciples of Christ there that want nothing more than to follow his will. So that was good to feed off of myself as a missionary. While I was there was the Georgia Macon Mission, and then the Atlanta North and Atlanta South missions. And then a couple years after I left, my mission at that time covered the southern tip of South Carolina, kind of the southeast tip. So it would have North Augusta, like I said, Bluffton, Hilton Head, Ridgeland, some of the main cities there, and then southeast Georgia. So as far west as Albany and Tifton, and then all the way up to kind of the coast. It didn't cover the little southeast corner where I think Folkston is, but it went right up to the Florida Georgia border. So that one of the border towns that I mentioned earlier was Pearson, Georgia, where I served my first area. And so those were kind of the boundaries there. And Macon was the main hub, kind of central within that whole mission. I imagine it's kind of the same with most missions. But then my mission was dispersed in the surrounding missions. I think it must have been in 2011 or 2010. But recently, this last year, became a mission again. And so I'm not sure what the boundaries are now, but if they're the same, it would have that Atlanta North and South, and the southeast part of Georgia would be Georgia Macon Mission still, with little parts of South Carolina. And then there's I think the mission north is Columbia, South Carolina. One of those two, I always get those two names mixed up. And then to the south, I think it's Jacksonville, Florida. That's the closest one. And I'm not sure the one to the west what that would be. But yeah, those are kind of what the mission boundaries are like for the mission. There were a lot of people from Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras. So those 3 countries primarily. So if you serve Spanish speaking there, you're going to eat well. They cook very, very well. But there were some people scattered kind of from Panama, and not very many South Americans. I remember teaching some people from Peru, and there were some members from Uruguay, but and Venezuela, but not too many. Mostly Mexico, Guatemala, and Honduras, like I said, and a couple other Central American countries. And then there are a lot of, at least compared to where I'm from, Salt Lake City, there were quite a few African American people, but Caucasians as well. I mean, it was a good melting pot of cultures, ethnicities, and yeah, I didn't feel like, I felt like, especially within the church, they all, there would be Spanish speaking branches or wards meeting the same buildings as the English-speaking ones, and there was a good synergy between the two, a good relationship between the two, and a lot of love that existed between the groups, and it didn't necessarily feel like groups. I mean, I guess we had different services, but I mean, we'd go to the same activities, and there was just a good bond there. So yeah, that's what the demographic picture looked like. In the South, we never had problems getting into doors. The problems was getting out of them. They all wanted to talk and talk and talk and tell their stories, and you had to get really good at interjecting or cutting them off and making it, not in a rude way at all, but kind of turning their story into something that applies to the gospel, and then carrying on with the lesson. Otherwise, you'd be there all day because they're so friendly, really, really friendly people in the South. And so, but one of the things is that they also, want to share their perspective on religion and their journey to get to know God with you, and every, detail about it. And you could tell in this instance with Jerry Coleman that he had a really special relationship with God, and you could tell by the way he prays. It's hard, I'm not going to, redo one of his prayers that he says right now, but it's really, difficult to talk about. But it seemed like he was talking to, his Father, really, and it was a very sincere, personal prayer, and it was a good reminder and example to me of how personal and real prayer is. And I think I remember getting a little teary-eyed when I first heard that. I can't remember if it was opening or closing prayer that he said while we were visiting with him that first time, but it just touched my heart. And at that moment, I was really touched, and I realized that I was in the right place, right where God wanted me to be. And that feeling increased the more and more people I met down there. But they're really warm-hearted people, and so it was an absolute pleasure to serve them. Baptist, Pentecostal, and Catholic, I would say, would be the three most predominant religions that I encountered. I was Spanish and English speaking, so most of the English speaking people were Baptist. I feel most of the Spanish speaking people were Catholic, but then you would get a pretty good mixture of both English speaking and Spanish that would attend Pentecostal services as well. And so those were, I feel, three of the main other religions down there in that area. So yeah, I was able to attend a couple other services, I think once or twice, that we were invited to, and it was good to see how other people worship as well. Close to my first area was the Okefenokee Swamp. I never got to go there. I don't know why I ended up going there, because I was there for 7.5 months. But there's some swamplands, I guess, in part of Georgia. There are alligators. So I've actually had to stop on the road to let an alligator cross it. And one of the recent converts that I taught had an alligator in their backyard. Anyway, a lot of just your typical stuff that you would find in the forest, like squirrels, and there's interesting bugs. I'm trying to remember a lot of their names. There's banana spiders. That's kind of the infamous spider there. Pretty big, ugly looking spider, but not, and I hear myths about them being dangerous, ones about them not. We would throw sticks in their web and watch them quickly run over, and they would just very, very carefully cut out the stick almost immediately. It was pretty cool to see. That was kind of like the little, banana spider, we're going to throw a stick in there and watch it cut it out real quick. But let's see what else. There were all sorts of burrowing, I can't remember what they're called, these bugs that would burrow in the ground and leave big mounds. In a lot of areas where you'd walk around, there'd be these mounds kind of in the ground where these almost like crickets would burrow into the ground. Let's see other wildlife. Yeah, but it's really green. There's a lot of trees. It's really plain, flat. So yeah, not really a desert. There are no desert areas. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other sorts of animals there that I mean, of course there are, but ones that really stand out. But yeah, none come to mind right now. So that would be the main thing. Most people would say Hilton Head Island, because it's a really nice gated community, really neat beaches. I don't know if typically your mission president doesn't let you go to the beach, but if you weren't a missionary, that a lot of people go and visit those areas, and they're really nice. And as well as some of the cities leading up to it, like Bluffton. Also, Augusta, Georgia, is in the mission, where they have the masters. And I actually lived close to the course for a while, and so I drive by the big hedge that hedges the course all the time. And when I served in North Augusta in South Carolina, close to there. Savannah, Georgia's in the mission. A lot of people go and visit that. I had some, I never served there, but I had some mission conferences there. Beautiful, beautiful city, old-timey type area. And the rest of Georgia have a lot of really unique places. Most of it is kind of in that area. It's rural. Macon and Warner Robins, not so much. There's an Air Force Base in Warner Robins. It's kind of a neat area for that reason. But the rest are just really rural, and so they're typical places where I wouldn't recommend people visiting necessarily. There's not anything that's really like breathtaking. But to me, now that I've been there, those rural places, even, it would be really a neat experience to go back and see some of the broad. They have a lot of cotton fields and peanut fields that are just like, you would hear that and just be like, oh, that doesn't sound too neat to see. But really, once you go there and see them, it's a cool view to drive down the highway or be in a certain area and see those big farms. But yeah, I think the major cities to visit would be like Hilton Head and Savannah and Augusta. Though Macon would be interesting as well, Warner Robins, for people who haven't been there before. One time there was a hurricane warning. I don't remember the name. It might have been Ike, but maybe not. But there was a hurricane warning where I was serving in Bluffton, South Carolina, which is close to the coast, close to Hilton Head Island. And they evacuated all the missionaries from Hilton Head Island and Bluffton and Beaufort and some of those surrounding areas and brought them into Ridgeland, South Carolina. It was interesting because we heard that this hurricane's going to be big, kind of a deal. We've got to get out of there. So we packed 14 missionaries maybe into the missionary apartment in Ridgeland. And so it was just packed. We had all sorts of blow-up mattresses and things of that sort, all in that one house. And it was good to see all the elders in one place. It was kind of fun. It was really fun. But the hurricane ended up being nothing more than a little rainstorm. As far as what hit all the areas in our mission, there was no damage, no anything kind of happened. Which is kind of the joke, like we had all these weather reporters who were saying like, there's gonna be big warning, and nothing really happened. We did get snow twice while I was there. I was in the Macon area, kind of, I think by Perry, Georgia, or Warner Robins actually is where I was serving. It's close to Macon. Which was really random. It started snowing while we were in church, so the members all started to leave and go in the middle of our Sunday school lesson and go make snowballs really quick because they never get to see snow, and they were so excited about it. And I didn't expect to see any snow over there. But it can be a little chilly, though, even though it doesn't snow much, because the humidity kind of chills the bones. So yeah, you're going to want to bring a sweater and of course your suit coat and be prepared to wear that in the winter because it does get kind of cold. The food down there is amazing. They have all sorts of different kinds of food. Like I mentioned earlier, they like to fry just about anything. While I was down there, they had a night where all the ward members got it was called, I can't remember what it was called, but it was just basically a random food night. So they brought a whole bunch, from squirrel, turtle, fish that are typical, chicken and such, but really just random. I think they had some alligator as well, just random foods that were fun to eat. Those aren't typical things you'll eat, but ones that are fried chicken, hush puppies, biscuits and gravy, grits. I love grits. They have cheese grits. I'm not a big fan of cheese grits, but I love normal, just buttery, delicious grits. And I ate a lot of Hispanic food, being Spanish speaking as well. So, all sorts of amazing tacos, and I had cow brain tacos and cow tongue tacos, but then your normal chicken and beef tacos that were really, really good. That was all actually pretty good too. We taught one family that was from Trinidad and Tobago, and we ate chicken feet. as well. So that was interesting stuff, but nothing you should be too, or any missionary should be too worried about. Those weren't very typical foods. They were just kind of random that we happened to eat. But yeah, just delicious food. Obviously they have the typical stuff, fast food chains there that you'd have anywhere in the U.S. But the stuff unique to them. Oh, also okra is something you run into. Interesting vegetable. I'm not too fond of it, but you might be, or other people might be. But yeah, and they have pickled okra too. But yeah, I think there's probably some areas they'll have pecans or pecans, however you choose to say it, all over, and they'll collect them in buckets and put them in whatever they're cooking somehow, find creative ways to involve them in their cooking, or they'll just pick them up off the street and eat them. I kind of got sick of that. It's pretty dry nut if you're just picking it up off the sidewalk and eating it. I did that for a little bit, but then it was just like, no thanks. So, but those are all over in some parts, and peanuts as well. They have a lot of peanut farms, and so you can eat quite a bit of that. Boiled peanuts is another thing to watch out for. I don't think they're particularly too delicious, but other people do. They're not bad. So yeah, that's another thing that I think is pretty unique to the food scene there in Georgia. Make sure you bring short sleeve shirts. It's hot and humid. The people, there's really, there's nothing I need to tell you. They're so friendly and happy that everything just kind of comes natural. So just be ready to listen and to talk, because they love to talk and tell stories and listen to your stories, but more so tell theirs. And yeah, the culture is very. They have a lot of awesome food, delicious food. They like to fry food too. There's a lot of delicious places where you can get good fried chicken that I absolutely miss to the max. And let's see, what else you asked about. As far as things to bring besides, the weather can vary too. I mentioned short sleeve shirts, but also you're going to want to bring some good thick sweaters and plenty of things to bundle up in the winter, because the humidity can really chill your bones. Safety, I always felt, I taught a lot of people that lived in, rural areas and urban, from big, mansions to trailer parks, but I always felt safe. So I don't know how helpful that is, but maybe it was the fact that I was a missionary and was being washed over, especially. But yeah, I always felt safe there. Though maybe thinking back on it, there's a couple areas where I maybe would take a little more care in traveling as contemplating returning. But yeah, getting around was really, really easy. They have good, you have to be good with a map, or hopefully your mission president lets you use GPS, because they didn't for ours. They wanted us to get to learn how to use maps and such, and then not have to worry about all the GPSs and stuff, the technology. So they don't have the grid system that I'm used to being from Salt Lake, and so it's just like memorizing all these different roads and where they are, and it can get a lot of the rural areas, it can get where you're going down random paths and roads, and it's there's no rhyme or reason to them, and you just kind of gotta roll with the punches as you get lost. So yeah, bring a map and maybe brush up on your skills of reading a map. But yeah, and get plenty of exercise before you go down there, because you'll eat well, like I mentioned earlier. Probably put on some weight. I didn't actually lost weight, probably because of how much I was walking around and the heat and the humidity. So while I was serving in Warner Robins, I think it was, we caught wind that Gladys Knight, and the group that she is with is called the Saints Unified Voices. So she was set apart and to go around basically with this choir, and they sing the LDS hymns, but in a more spiced up sort of way, so to speak. Getting a lot more excited about them and singing in kind of the Southern Baptist, I would say, compare it to way, where they're getting really, really excited about things. And it's also, they have basically are telling the message of the restoration in between the intervals, a lot of the songs, and teaching almost the missionary lessons. And so we invited a lot of people. They came up to Savannah, Georgia, and tons of people came to listen to Gladys Knight sing and tell her story of becoming, a member of the LDS Church, which was really good for a lot of the people living in the area, because she comes from a similar background in terms of religion and such. And so a lot of people got baptized after seeing her example and listening to her conversion and her husband's conversion stories, but also listening to the fun music that she and her choir sang. It was really, really fun to listen to. I know that they have CDs as well that they produce of the music, but it is just a different twist on the hymns that make them a little more fun to sing and listen to. Football is a really big deal. Most people in the Georgia Macon Mission will be Georgia Bulldog fans, and really, unless you're kind of around the Atlanta area, I hear you'll be a Georgia Bulldog fan. But if you're in those other areas, you'll be Georgia Tech. So yeah, if you talk to them about the Georgia Bulldogs, I don't know how you as a missionary, we would just they would talk to us about some of the players and things that have gone on during the season, and we would remember that and kind of bring it up in conversation with other people as we kind of got to know them and wanted to build a relationship to them. We'd talk about Georgia football, and they'd always sit up in their seat and want to engage in conversation in those instances. So they're very proud of their football, love it. The stadiums there are huge, the high school ones. I never got to go to a game while I was there, but the high school football stadiums are just gargantuan, and they're really, really nice because football is such a big deal there. So it's good to talk to them about that, and especially probably a lot of people that you teach will end up playing it. We taught Herschel Walker's, I can't remember the relationship, but I think it was his nephew. He's a big, famous football player that played at Georgia, and a couple other actually relatives of, I think it was Champ Bailey, the corner for the Denver Broncos right now, one of his cousins. I mean, so if you can bring up football somehow too, you can really relate to a lot of them there in Georgia. So while I was out there, I saw the Lord blessing my family while I was gone. My sister got married in the temple, and that all went well. It was obviously sad that I wasn't able to attend, but they made a cardboard cutout of me, and that was present in most of the pictures. So I was there, I guess, in a thinner version of me. We since then, she's had a healthy baby boy that was recently born, and our family, I feel, grew close together. Though I was far away, a lot of the relationships in our family improved and got closer. My brother's he left on a mission about 2 or 3 weeks ago to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he's doing well there. And yeah, we've had no health issues, and things have gone really well. I think that the Lord has watched over us, and especially while I was gone on my mission, I could tell that we grew closer as a family and closer to the Lord, and that our faith was really strengthened through that service and through that time. We were tracting in a big apartment complex that had a lot of doors, and it was time to where we needed to get to our apartment. I think 9 o'clock was approaching, and so we started going to our cars, and I kind of had the feeling that there was a door we needed to go knock in the most random. It was like the 4th floor in like the middle of one of these. There were several buildings, and I said, no, we got to go, knock this door. And usually I haven't had, in my mission, I didn't have very many instances where it said, okay, you got to knock that door. It's just one of those things where you go out and you do it, and no matter what, maybe the Spirit will guide you to a certain area, but nothing quite as vivid as, okay, like go knock this door of all doors. And so we went really quickly and knocked on it. It ended up being the relative, I think it was the older son of one of the members of the branch presidency, who had gone straight from the church, becoming active, and we had an activity coming up, and so we were able to invite him to attend and talk to him a little bit about the church. He had some poor experiences with missionaries in the past, and really just reach out to him and help him feel more comfortable about the church and everything. So that a testimony strengthener of following the promptings of the Spirit, and a great opportunity to help someone come back to the church. While I was serving in North Augusta, I was out tracting, and I got a phone call from the mission president. And those are either really good calls or really bad. I kind of learned that they don't really go in between. And so, I looked down at the phone and answered it, and my mission president let me know that my grandfather had passed away while I was out in the field. And that was a really, really tough message to receive, because I was very close to my grandfather. And this happened to be the one that was from Savannah, Georgia, that I mentioned. But it turned out that a little while before, a week or so before, we all had mission interviews with the mission president. And recently we had introduced the policy, or the mission president introduced the policy, that we don't get to go to the temple as missionaries because we're there to serve the living, was kind of the reasoning behind it. And but, and I found myself in that interview anyway asking, there was going to be rededication of the Mexico City temple while I was, there in that area. And they were going to broadcast it, obviously, and make kind of the local stake centers extensions of the temple and show the rededication. And so even though they had said, we're going to go away from, visiting the temple. Usually I think you got to visit once a year, the Atlanta temple. We're going to allow the missionaries, we're not going to allow the missionaries to go to the temple. I found myself asking my mission president if we could go in this instance to this rededication, just attend it with the members and such, and just see that. And he said yes, and I was kind of surprised by that. And I was like, okay, great, this will be a neat experience. But I didn't know that, I'm sure part of the reasoning why that came up, and or at least that I felt strongly about asking about that, unbeknownst to me at the time, obviously, was the passing of my grandfather that same day of the rededication. So it was a neat experience to be able to be in the extension of the temple, essentially, on that same day, and really be reminded that families can be together forever. And that's an experience I'll never forget. It was incredible to feel the Spirit during that rededication. And just know that I'll see him and be with my grandfather again. And that brought that story, sharing that with my family, brought, obviously, strengthened their faith in the tender mercies of the Lord, that he really watches over us and is constantly trying to remind us that he's there and that he cares about us. And so that was another experience that from my mission that really strengthened our family's faith and relationship, and that I'm really grateful for. That helped me through a difficult time. Within my last 2 weeks of being in the mission field, we didn't have a baptism, and I really wanted to help someone become baptized in the last couple weeks. And so we were out tracting before church, and knocking doors and not having much success on a Sunday morning. I think that's pretty typical, at least where most areas where I served. But we finally and we had our typical door routines, where we'd open up, by saying certain things, or based on what kind of the Spirit had indicated. But on this particular door, we were like, okay, we got to be to church in like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it was. Let's just invite this guy to church. Let's just say, hey, we're missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're about to go to church. Do you want to come with us? Kind of a thing, and just try and get him to come. And so we just knocked on the door after deciding, okay, we're going to do this. And it was really the last door we were going to knock on. And an individual by the name of Ricardo Chocua answered the door. He was from Mexico. And he said, sure, I want to come to church. And so we got him there and taught him the lessons, invited him to be baptized. And we were able to baptize him on the last Sunday that I was in the mission field. And we're able to confirm him and watch him become a member the church, and that was really special to me to just, as I'm leaving, be able to witness that important event in someone's life where they're making such important covenants with God, and it was also a tender mercy and strength in my testimony that when we ask, we will receive. I was praying really, really hard to help someone become, receive the blessings of baptism during that last period of my mission, and pushed, to the end, and was diligent, and was able to witness that Ricardo Chakwa become a member. My mission means everything in the world to me. Serving the Georgia Macon Mission in Georgia and South Carolina was an absolutely incredible experience. I felt like I was served more by the people than I was able to serve, though I gave my all every single day to help them come closer to Christ. My testimony was strengthened in our Savior, and I have a very, very strong testimony that Jesus is the Christ, and that His church has been restored on the earth. The importance of having a living prophet also really, really was emphasized as I spoke to all these different people who weren't sure where to find truth, and they had the good word of God in the Bible, and they followed as best they could what they had. It was great to be able to bring them, direction from a prophet to help them understand the Bible, and also understand that the Lord has revealed, even more Scripture in the Book of Mormon that I also have a very, very strong testimony of the truthfulness of. But my mission was absolutely incredible. I wouldn't go anywhere else in the world other than to Georgia and South Carolina. The Georgia Macon Mission was it was such a blessing to my life, though I didn't leave to serve myself. I felt like there was a great opportunity to serve, and a lot of people ready to hear the gospel, to hear the message of the restoration. And it was wonderful to watch the joy that it brought into their lives, helping them learn that God cares about them so much that He's brought these teachings back to the earth to help them learn the way how to have lasting happiness here in this life and in the life to come as eternal family units. Some things that I really, really stand out in my mind that I learned while I was on the mission is the importance of following the priesthood keys and following the mission president in his direction. I had two mission presidents while I was in the mission field. Both were incredible men that I learned a lot from. That I'm really grateful for. And as you can imagine, having one mission president after the other, there were changes that were made, and one of the interesting things that I got to see in my mission is the blessings that came to the missionaries and the people who the missionaries were serving, who followed the mission president's direction. When it was difficult, or when we didn't quite understand perhaps why we're asked to do things a certain way, when we followed the Lord's direction that He was giving through the mission president, it was very, very amazing to see the miracles that were performed in the lives of other people. We were able to, my second year in mission, finally reach the goal that President Hinckley challenged all missions to reach in doubling convert baptisms. And that was a huge blessing to witness. And then the years after, those numbers increase exponentially, and it came from following the Lord and His servants, and following the Spirit and teaching as a missionary and being obedient. But I don't know. I'm speechless, really. About words can't describe well enough, as much as I'd like to, how incredible of a place the Georgia Macon Mission and the areas that are in that jurisdiction is. There's just such a love for the Lord there already by all people, and love for other people. They want to share their life experiences and their relationships with the Lord, and things that have strengthened their testimony in Him. And it's really faith building, and just a great, friendly place. And I'm very grateful to have been able to serve there. And I have a strong testimony and gratitude for and of missionary work. I love it. And like I said, my mission means the world to me. Though it was hot and humid there in Georgia, it was worth every second of being in that weather. The people were amazing, and the experiences and the miracles that I witnessed in people's lives as they came under Christ was amazing as well.
It was hot. I remember like walking off the plane. You know, you get off the plane, there's the little like tarmac thing, and then you walk into the airport. And I remember walking from the plane into that little area before you got into the airport, and it was like there was a couple inches in between, you know, the plane and this thing, and you could feel like the heat and the humidity like driving in, and it was like instant sweating. And then we got in the mission car, you know, and it was hot walking there, and we thought it would be like cool at the mission house to play basketball before. Like, so the mission president had a basketball hoop out there, so we're playing basketball. And I mean, we walked into the house when they called us in for dinner, just drenched in sweat from playing basketball out in this heat and humidity. And that's what I remember from my whole mission is like, I would go home at night and take a shower because I was drenched. But then I'd wake up in the morning almost like drenched from sweat because, you know, we really couldn't use our air conditioning. And so it was like, I'm drenched sleeping at night, so I'd take a shower in the morning, come home for lunch and take like a 5-minute shower just to like try to relieve yourself from, I mean, it's like, you just sweat all the time. But then also like we would get caught in these crazy like rainstorms in Tifton, Georgia, this little town. I remember we would just be walking and you'd see clouds rolling within 5 minutes, and then it was like buckets, you know. So I mean, just the craziest rainstorms. You'd be walking in 6 inches of water. So it was either you were wet from sweating or you were wet from like insane like rainstorms, you know. And so it was cool, but you just get used to it. You know what I mean? You ask for a lot of glasses of water, and people have the Southern hospitality thing. I mean, they're always willing to give you water. Southern people are all real friendly, even if they believe you're going to hell. They'll still invite you in to eat, still give you something to drink. Everybody's very religious, and most of that faith is centered in Christ. You know what I mean? So it's a cool area. The people, I liked Georgia because it was kind of slower. Growing up in California, I mean, when I worked for my dad after high school, I would have to drive an hour to LA every morning to work, and that was at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we'd miss traffic, get off at like 2, 3 o'clock, and then it would take us 3 hours to get home at night because of rush hour, you know? So growing up in California, it was always, you know, so busy and tons of people and, you know, very populated and, you know, traffic everywhere. And every time you go to stores, it was just busy. And I mean, when I was living there, it was just normal. It was fine. But when I went to the mission, I liked how like much slower it was, and more how like people kind of knew everybody. You know, everybody was kind of connected, and the lifestyle was a little bit more like laid back. You know, wherever you go in the South, it was like, you know, people aren't so concerned about getting from point A to point B, but kind of like the experiences in between. You know, they don't overlook things, and if something's happening that's they think's important, it's like they take their time with it rather than rushing it because they have somewhere to be. So that was really cool. The other thing is people are very hospitable. The whole, you know, South being the Southern hospitality thing, it's not a myth. Like, people are actually generally very nice, you know. The one thing we got used to was, you know, walking around, it's like everybody waves at everybody, super friendly, you know, where sometimes I think in California, it's like if you waved at somebody, it was awkward and they want to get away from you, you know. The South, it was just cool to see, you know, how nice people are, how rooted they are in Christ, regardless if it's our church or not. Everybody basically had that faith in Christ. The people were very friendly, you know. Like I said, people would go, I mean, it was very dominant Baptist background, you know, and in their church, they tend to think that, you know, we're not Christian, and they have their beliefs on that. But, I mean, we'd be knocking on their door, but they'd be shaking their finger at us, telling we're wrong, and I'd just stop and say, hey, it's hot out here. You think I can have a glass of water? And as in middle of sentence of them, like, you know, like rebuking me, they're like, oh yeah, come on in. They'd bring me in and they'd get me a glass of water, and then they'd start, like, you know, going at me again and telling me how I'm wrong, and, you know, I'm going to hell. And then I would stop and be like, you know, we haven't had dinner yet. Do you think you could make us something to eat? Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. So then they would bring us in, they would feed us, and we'd have a nice dinner, and then they'd go back to, you know, getting after us. And obviously they think that what they're talking about is right. And obviously they're trying, you know, to save us too. But so it's not like they're doing it because they're mean people. I mean, they have genuine interest, but it's just very nice people, you know. To me, it was crazy, like, to see kind of the South, and it's you know, I said it was slower and stuff, but it was almost like set back a few years, like the racism and like that still existed in the South, you know. I mean, there were certain towns that I served in that there was like a street, you know, and it was like white, black, you know. You had your First Baptist Church on the white side, and then you had your First Baptist Church on the black side. And then you had like a Methodist church on this side for the white people, and then you had like the Methodist church on, you know, the black side. And I don't think that's because people were necessarily racist, but I think that's how they were more comfortable. You know what I mean? And so seeing that kind of still existing, you know what I mean? And there was also just the way people would talk. It was just almost like 20 years back, you know? The coolest part of my mission was, I think my first area was Beaufort, South Carolina. I guess it's considered an island. It's completely surrounded by ocean water. A lot of it's like rivers, but they still call it an island. I mean, on our P days, we go down to the docks, catch fish. We would throw out shrimp nets, and we catch shrimp right on the dock and pull them out, eat them right there on the dock, boil shrimp. We had a couple people who were teaching who lived on sailboats. I mean, for dinner, we would catch shrimp off their little dock right in the ocean. We'd boil cabbage and shrimp, you know, eat it right there. So I really liked Beaufort. That was a cool place. I remember this one town that we were in, Tifton, Georgia. It's a small town. That was one of those towns that kind of seemed very segregated, and the elders weren't really tracting on the other side of town because it was pretty scary, almost. You know, I mean, it was very poverty stricken, a lot of projects, a lot of ghetto, and missionaries weren't so much well received on that side. So when me and my first companion got into that area, we whitewashed the area. That was like our first place we wanted to go because there hadn't been any work put in there. So we ended up going down into that area, and it was weird because, I mean, we'd wave at people and people wouldn't wave at us. You know, we'd knock on doors and people were, you know, intimidated by us because they weren't used to seeing that many white people down in that area, you know. And I mean, we'd knock on doors, and some people, I mean, you'd hear the door slam, and then people run through the house, and you hear the back door slam, and then the back door open, and someone running down the street, and we'd have to yell out, "Hey, we're not the police," you know, because a lot of people didn't even know we were missionaries. They thought we were the police, and sometimes they'd come back and be like, "Oh, okay, cool," you know. But in that part of town, it was hard because people didn't know who we were, number one, but number two, they were afraid that we were law enforcement. So there was this basketball court that we called the drug corners because there was this ghetto basketball court in the middle of town, and on there was a house on every corner that sold drugs. We thought sold drugs. 100% they sold drugs. So we call it the drug corners. And that's where all like the gangster type dudes hung out. I mean, like the hood guys that you see in movies that are like, you know, pretty intimidating. And they would all play basketball. And every time we'd walk by there, we would get some of the meanest looks I've ever seen. And so we were praying and we were thinking, we're like, man, what can we do to like build a relationship of trust in this area and have people at least know who we are, you know, that we're, you know, church people and not cops, you know? So I thought about it. We prayed about it. And then a few days after, I told my companion, I'm like, hey, when we go out today, wear your basketball shoes instead of your church shoes. He's like, okay. So we're wearing our full proselyting clothes. We've got our name tags on. We've got our ties on. We have our basketball shoes. And we walk down to this place called the Drug Corners. And, you know, we're walking up to these guys. There must have been like 20 guys playing basketball or hanging around there. And we walked up and I stopped their game. And I said, okay, you know, we got the next game. And they were like, what? And everybody stopped and they're like, the white boys want to play basketball? I'm like, yeah, we got the next game. So they stopped their game and they chose their best two. And I'm not a great basketball player, but my companion was pretty good. And we knew how to play team ball, you know. So in the middle of the Drug Corners, we're playing basketball 2-on-2 against these guys, you know, and they're trying to like dunk on us and they're trying to like, you know, we're behind the back. And we're winning, you know. I mean, we're playing team ball, putting it up. And every time that we like scored a point, it was like the project opened and people were flooding to this basketball court. There must have been like 200-300 people watching this basketball game. And every time that we scored a point, it's like people got louder and people are laughing and, you know, cheering. And it was like the ghetto opened up and like everybody flooded to this place. And we ended up winning. And after that, I think I got a high five from everybody there, you know. And after that, we went anywhere and everybody knew who we were. It's like, wait, you're the Mormon missionaries, right? You guys played basketball. Oh, come on, you guys thirsty? You know, it's like everybody knew who we were. It's like all the guys were there to play basketball. Every time we'd ride our bikes by, you know, they're, you know, waving at us, hollering at us. And it was like through that experience, it was playing basketball and necessarily wasn't like a spiritual experience. But we got into that part of town that people hadn't really connected with. And it was like, they trusted us. They knew who we were. They liked us, and it opened a lot of doors. And one of my, you know, my best experiences in the mission came from a lady in that area. And I don't know that I would have ever reached her had we not like played basketball with these guys in the middle of the ghetto, you know. So my favorite area was Tifton, and it was that small town. Kip Moore, I don't know if you know who he is. He's a country singer. He's from Tifton and actually worked a stage crew over the summer and met him and talked about Tifton. But it's a small town, very divided when it comes to, you know, the ethnic groups. But it was my favorite. And we really liked going on the other side of town where we played basketball. And, you know, we would meet all kinds of people and everybody would talk to us because everybody had that faith in Christ and they were very receiving to a message. But, you know, I don't think that a lot of people understood the message of the restoration. So we were really praying to find someone who could, you know, receive the gospel, that we could teach, that we could baptize. And we're walking through this area and, you know, usually we don't go into people's backyards. You know what I mean? It's kind of like one of those things. If someone walked into my backyard, I'd probably knock them out. You know, it's like, so we were trying not to like go into people's backyards. But we were walking by this area and I felt like I seen this little old lady in her backyard and I felt something say, hey, go talk to that lady. And I kind of almost ignored it like, you know, no, she's not gonna accept the church, you know, just keep going. So my own, you know, stupidity, you know, but the Lord said, no. Go talk to this lady. So we go into this backyard and talk to this lady and she's smoking a cigarette. She's, you know, probably close to her 70s. And her name was Miss Joyce. And Miss Joyce, if you see this, love you. But she was in her backyard and it was almost like a little farm in the ghetto. I mean, it was a really cool place. But she allowed us to sit down outside and talk with her. Her husband didn't really have a desire to talk to us, you know, but we talked to her and we explained the restoration and she was getting it, you know, and she understood it and she invited us back. And it was not an easy process or a conversion for her. In fact, I didn't baptize her because she had a problem with smoking. And she'd smoked since she was like 14 years old, and she's in her 70s. And In fact, I mean, we would come to teach her, and sometimes one time I remember her flipping over a bowl because she wasn't supposed to not be smoking, and she flipped over this bowl, and I waited. I said, "Hey, Miss Joyce, can you get us a glass of water?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll get you a glass of water." So she left, and I flipped over a bowl, and there's her cigarettes, and I put them in my top pocket. So when she walked back, we busted her, and had her cigarettes in my pocket, which is kind of weird. But she she had the desire, but the hard thing was she couldn't quit smoking. We had crazy lessons where the Spirit was so strong. She was coming to church. In fact, one Sunday, it was one of the coolest things. We were in our gospel principles class, and they asked if anybody could play the piano because they didn't have someone to play the piano. And Miss Joyce had played the piano her whole life, so she's like, "I'll play." And if you could imagine this little old black lady in gospel principles singing as like country and as like gospel as it gets, like I can't even remember the song, but some hymn, and she just jazzed it up. And I mean, I wanted to stand up and just clap because I felt so good about her being there. And, just like the excitement she brought, to that class. But the toughest thing is she couldn't quit smoking. She's struggled with it her whole life. I mean, can you imagine smoking for that many years and then someone asking you to quit, But she knew it was a requirement to get baptized. And so it was right before I was getting transferred. I mean, we worked on Miss Joyce for, 3-4 months trying to get her to this point where we could baptize her. She wanted to be baptized, but she had this struggle with smoking. And so we offered to give her a blessing. And we gave her a blessing, and the next day she said she woke up and something felt different, and she didn't know what it was. And she went about her daily stuff, made breakfast, started going about her house, and she just kept thinking, like, what's different? Until, later on in the day, she realized that she had no desire to smoke a cigarette. She didn't smoke, and the whole day she didn't smoke. And since that day, she has never smoked another cigarette. I mean, we put her on, we got missionary plans to like help people quit smoking that, focus on like habits and, trying to get them to change things so that it kind of helps them slowly stop quitting. We used the power of the priesthood, and she exercised her faith, and she quit from that day and has never smoked another cigarette. Fortunately, I got transferred like a week later and didn't get to see her baptized. And that, for me, it would have been cool to see, you know what I mean? But it didn't matter to me because I loved her, and I still love her, and seeing her being able to be baptized, even though I wasn't there, has been one of my greatest joys in the mission, just seeing where she came from. And her husband went from not liking us to, giving us a bag of boiled peanuts every time we went. And he never joined the church, but he came to the baptism, and, he became a lot more friendly with us and supported her in it, and it was just a cool story there, So I don't know, regardless of what mission you get called to, I think that it's something to be excited for, and hopefully, you've prepared yourself good enough that you can go from day one and be a good missionary and not, have to be converted like I did in the middle of the mission. But specifically to those people who are going to the Georgia Macon Mission, I'm excited for you because, the mission for me redirected my life. It makes me nervous to think about where I'd be if I didn't go to the mission, and maybe specifically that mission, because I feel like the calls are inspired. It's not by chance that you're in a certain area. And I say this all the time. I've probably said it today, but I feel like God takes you and who you are and takes your personality and puts it in a certain mission because he knows that there's going to be people in that mission who need you to be there, that will connect with you, that will connect with your life experiences, that will relate to where you've been in life, or may just click with your personality. But the Georgia Macon Mission changed my life, and the experiences that I had in that mission it's 10 years later, and I'm sitting down talking with you guys like it's yesterday. It's something that I value more than anything. Besides my family and besides my family, it's been the most important thing that I've ever done, and it's changed how I directed my family. The blessings that come from the 2 years that I spent in Georgia will change my existence forever, because number one, I was converted in the mission, and I've had so many spiritual experiences that have come from serving those 2 years, that I could never deny, the existence of God or the existence of His church on the earth. The blessings that have come from the mission, I don't think I can put into words what it means to me. And I'm just a regular guy, So I know you wanted me to direct this towards the Georgia Macon missionaries, but I want to direct this at all kids getting prepared to serve a mission. There's no stereotype for a missionary, There's no right or wrong person that goes to serve, It's like I barely made it through high school. You know what I mean? I still have no desire to go to college, but I was a great missionary, and it's not because of me. You know what I mean? It's because the Lord used me as an instrument to bring other people to Him. And the joy that brings into your life is something that you really can't explain. And I'm just a regular guy saying that. I'm not a general authority. I'm not a bishop, but I can tell you that God used me as an instrument in His hands for the salvation of men. And in the process of that happening, the Spirit that has been brought into my life has changed me and has made me happy. I've found what happiness is, and the mission will do that for you too. If you're ready to go on a missionary, if you're ready to go on a mission and you're worthy, go. Whether it's to the Georgia Macon Mission, whether it's to the Philippines, whether it's to Boise, Idaho, it doesn't matter where you go. It's going to be the same experiences, and I promise you that the reason you're there is because the Lord needs you there, and to let your personality shine, because the Lord puts you there to reach certain people, and you may be the only one who can do it. So if you're worthy and ready to go on a mission, go. If you're not quite there yet, get there. Regardless of what you've done, figure it out. Talk to the bishop. Repent, get the Spirit in your life, and go. Because I could say that I've been there personally, and I'm not going to admit to anything, and I'm not going to tell you what I've done wrong in my life, but I can tell you that I've taken advantage of the repentance process, and I know that Jesus Christ suffered and died for our sins, and partly the reason, and maybe this isn't the right thing to say, but partly the reason why I know that is because I've messed up, and I've had to partake of His grace, and I've had to be forgiven for the things that I've done wrong. And luckily, I slipped under the bar and I went on a mission, and it's changed my life. So I don't know. For me, it's to the young people. It's like, if you need someone to talk to, man, you guys give them my number. Just go on a mission, because I promise you it will change your life, and it'll be something you never regret, and it will be something that helps you feel close to God. And for me, it's helped. If I didn't go on a mission, I'd be in a very different place. I wouldn't be here talking with you guys. I probably wouldn't be at church Sunday. I probably wouldn't have my beautiful wife. I probably wouldn't have 3 kids. I probably wouldn't be, sealed to them in the temple. And I wouldn't have that feeling, that I've got in my heart now. And I can say that that's all from the mission. And I know it's supposed to prepare you for the Georgia Macon mission, but in general, it's like, if you can go on a mission, go. If you have second thoughts or if you're thinking about it, go, you know.